Now, let me just give you a quick agenda about what our plan is for today. So firstly, we're going to learn about the basics of business analysis. What does it mean? What does it entail to become a business analyst? Next, if you're considering a career, especially a new career in IT, you want to understand how the career prospects are, what's in store for you. Is it a good enough discipline now? Is it a good enough discipline for the future? And if that looks promising, then there's probably a catch. There needs to be something that's difficult about it. If it's a good paying job and it has promising career options, there's got to be something that is a hidden fact. So we'll explore what those hurdles could be, standing on your way from considering this as a career option today to a couple of months down the line, exploring and being a business analyst yourself. Then we'll take a look at what a BA does on a typical workday, how the day goes about, and what are the different things that you're engaged in, different aspects that you're managing. And lastly, we'll take a look at each of us. Do we possess the strengths? Do we possess the right traits who can make a good BA? Because certainly any career option cannot be a great option for every single person, right? So we want you to self-evaluate and see if this is the right career progression for you. And lastly, those hurdles that we came across, we'll figure out how to overcome those hurdles and how Requirements Inc. can help you overcome those hurdles. So that's the simplistic plan for today. Now, firstly, let's cover who a BA is. Okay. So, Kushbu, why don't you give me a line or two about what your understanding of a BA is and what is that a BA does?
A person who analyzes the business needs of the prospect and tries to help them out and shows them ways. That's what my understanding is.
Perfect.
I'm not sure if that's right.
Sure, that's absolutely right. Now, Garima, since you're working in IT already, let me pose a question to you. So if it's all about gathering user requirements and telling it to the developers, why do we need business analysts? Why not just ask the users what they want, ask the developers what and how to develop it? Why do we need it?
For me, BA fills the gap between a technical person and as a functional or the person who is actually getting that into that business.
Perfect.
So it's business and technical things which is exactly opposite to each other. So somebody fills that gap and communicate between both of them.
Perfectly said. And that's why I wanted someone who has some IT background to speak up on that, because obviously you would think that, okay, if it's all about gathering requirements and then sharing it with the development team, then why do we need a discipline? It's here and then say the same thing over again. Because one key thing that I've seen from my perspective is it's very hard to make your users tell you directly what exactly they want. Go into a meeting and ask them, okay, what are your requirements? They'll be all over the place. They'll know it, but they won't know how to translate it in IT speak so that it's easy for us to pick that up and then share it with the development team. It's not a direct one-to-one translation. It does get a little bit more involved and difficult than that, right? So that's why we have a discipline called business analysis. Now, this is the IIBA formal definition, and it's simple enough, and hence I adopted. Usually, I'm not a big fan of these formal textbook definitions, but this definitely works well for our purposes. The BA understands business problems and opportunities in the context of requirements and recommends the best solutions, which means you first listen. Understand what they do currently, how they get things done currently from an operational perspective, right? It's just like two different people talking about. You meet someone at a party and you ask them, okay, what do you do? And get into more details and understand what exactly they do. How do they start a process? How do they end the process? It could be something like, I manage loan applications and I approve them. So walk them through every single aspect of it. Where do your applications come from? What gets into your queue? Today, when you don't have an IT system, how does it happen? Do you have a folder for every loan application? Or as soon as you're done with one, another one gets emailed to you? Or do you have a physical folder on your desk? Talk to them, ask them exactly how and what do they do on a daily basis to get their job done, right? That's the first step. The next step is, okay, so if you don't have an IT system, you're going to build an IT system. But it's very likely that as a BA, an IT system already exists, and you're going to add more features to that IT system. That's the most common scenario. So in that case, try to understand what problem you're solving, because unless you know what problem you're solving, you're probably not going to be good at solving that problem. So understand, okay, this is what you do. Where is your hiccup? Where are the wrinkles? Where does it make it harder for you? What can we do to help? Again, not from a system, screen, UI, absolutely not. Just understanding what their pain points are. Number one, most important trait of a BA is to understand where their pain points from. Because not only it helps you devise the right solution, but it also helps you advocate the user's need to your development team. Because sometimes you'll get resistance from the development team saying that, why do they need this? This doesn't make any sense to me. I don't understand it. So you need to explain from the user's shoes, this is exactly what they want, this is the reason why. Or you might get a different sense of resistance that I'm not sure if this is really what exactly they want. And given the time and constraints that we've defined, it's probably not going to work the way they want it. Again, you need to be able to be a good advocate for the users and convince the development team how and what needs to be done. And also, we need to represent the development team to the users. Because they might think of a particular feature as, just add a field there and then do this validation and then submit it. Add the field, do the validation, submit it. That's it. What's the big deal? But it might be more involved than that, and users may not recognize or see that it's a lot more than what it's perceived to be. For example, that simple field could have 20 validations. That simple field might need your call center person to understand those 20 validations, explain to your customer why something doesn't work, what are the workarounds and whatnot. That simple field does require the time to develop those 20 validations, test those 20 validations, right? So no such thing as simple, easy, quick when it comes to IT development. Everything is involved. Maybe that simple field has to appear in 5 reports, and hence the reports need to be tested to make sure it's populating the data right? So anything that is perceived as simple may not be as simple, and unless you explain it to the users, not only advocating users and promoting their needs to the development team, but also being a reasonable conduit between these two conflicting parties. I like the way Garima said these are opposite people, right? When you put them into a meeting and you don't have a BA, they will butt heads. Okay? So it's important for us to represent both sides reasonably, and unlike the popular adage that the customer is always right, it doesn't work in IT. You need to fulfill your customers' needs, but you also are responsible to deliver a successful, usable product end of the day. If you're not able to deliver the system on the planned release date, you look bad, you make the developers look bad, the entire project team that's been working with you, everyone looks bad. So it's not only important to meet customers' needs, but also equally important to deliver a successful project in the planned timeline. It's also equally important, if not more important, right? So you'll have to work with the users and first make it clear, okay, this is the boundary of what we've agreed to do in this timeline, in this budget. So if they try to steer away from that boundary, it's a good time to remind them that, okay, you know what, this is not the last time we're going to touch this feature. Maybe these great ideas that you have, we can still get that considered for the next release. So don't feel like you have to do everything done right the first time around. Keep them reminded that do not stay away or go away from the scope that was originally negotiated and discussed and funded. Because a little thing there, those are the ones that cause a project to fail, mainly because you didn't have adequate time to test it and you see several bugs popping up in that area. So again, you might be the BA, you might say that I define my requirements right, I'm done, but we also need to make sure that we are representing the entire development team, developers, testers, configuration managers. Everyone from the development team, they think BA is, the face of the entire team. Same as other way around. You as a BA need to show what your business team, what your users need. You need to feel that pain so that you are able to explain it. So firstly, understand the pain points. then come into conclusion or get an agreement that this is how that pain point can be solved adequately. And thirdly, propose that to the development team and then get it done. So it involves three key skill set here. One is listening skills, right? When we say communication skills, we think it's talking good English, having good command in the language. It's not just talking well. It's also listening well, right? So you have to listen to their pain points, ask intriguing questions, get yourself convinced what their problem is and that it's something that needs to be solved. If not, speak up. Tell them, you know what, you have limited budget for IT development each year, so is this giving you the bang for your buck? Is there something else we could do? Do we have bigger fish to fry? Talk to them, engage in a conversation. Explain why you're doing certain things a certain way. Yes, Krishna.
So as a business analyst, do you also have to have the knowledge of are they looking for financially, like a way of how the technical team is going to work and how much time do they need and how much money is going to be involved and stuff?
Good point. Great question. So the question is, as a BA, do you need to understand the financial aspects of developing something, building something? Or is that someone else's responsibility? It's our responsibility, but in an indirect way. It doesn't directly translate into the dollar amount you spend, but the effort you spend on something. So for example, if a certain quick solution would cost you 8 hours of development time, but a proper solid solution might cost you 80 hours, then it's probably worthy enough to try that quick fix and then see how it works, rather than investing that 80-hour option and see how that plays out, right? So we need to help users gauge and assess the time that you're spending on development and the return of investment that you're going to get. Because everyone understands that time, budget, and resources are going to be limited, right? So given the time is a finite number, how do you best translate that into your user's ability to translate, users getting the features for the agreed upon timeline, right? From that aspect, we need to understand, okay, when you say this is how much development time, how much testing time. We call it level of effort, which simply means how many hours you'll need to get this done. And we work with managers all the time. We'll talk to development managers and say, okay, this is the proposal. Can you review it quickly and tell me what your effort is? And it could be a range sometimes. Similarly, send it to the testing team, ask them what their effort is. So every change in a software comes with the effort from developers and testers, and we represent that to users and also project sponsors. So this is why we interact with everyone in the game. Project sponsors, who are the ones who fund the project and then they want to build the system, and they're investing because they hope that it's going to translate into value for your end users. Then it gets into a project manager whose responsibility is to get everything done on time, on budget. Then it comes to the BA, where it's broken down into different pieces, and you would own and manage your own piece of the software, which then gets developed by a team, tested by a team, and then maintained in production by another team. So this is the project lifecycle to give you a quick idea about the different teams engaged, and we get involved with every single one of them. Anytime a question about a particular feature, call the BA. Training team needs to know how to train the end users, call the BA. Testers and developers can't agree upon a certain area, they are reading the requirements differently, call the BA, set up a meeting with them. So we engage with everyone, we engage ourselves in every step of the life cycle. Unlike developers who are focused during development time, we are engaged right from a project proposal until the point that it goes into delivery and continue to be supported. Because we train the trainers, we train the support people, we train the call center. So our aspect and our discipline is end-to-end. It has a very large range, which is another reason why the industry and the profession is quite valuable, in the sense that it's not technology dependent, but it's wide stream. We get involved everywhere, right? So you can't just hire a BA for development time and then that's about it, because it's proposal, ongoing support, everything in between. So when we understand the business problems, we can translate that into proper unambiguous requirements. So after the listening part of it, next comes writing. So you should be able to write unambiguously so that it's not perceived as two different things by different people. It needs to be very clear, and you need to use some best practices, reusability, business rules, things like that. And we'll talk about that through the rest of the program. And whatever makes best sense. Maybe you'll draw it out as a diagram. Maybe you'll draw it out as a UI, a mock user interface design. So anything that needs to be done to communicate the user's intent most efficiently. Make sense? So once you've understood their problem, and then once you've conceived that and documented it, then you support the solution, the development of it, testing of it. Make sense? So as a BA, you're in meetings probably most of the time. 75% of the time at least goes in meetings because you're meeting with users, you're meeting with testers, you're meeting with developers, right? You're called by the VP to explain, what it is at a high level, right? There are different areas that we support. Make sense? And hence, you need to be a people person. It's not something that you get holed up in your cube and then write code all day. It's not like that. You do get called into all these areas, and you need to be able to manage and juggle multiple responsibilities. Prioritize them. What is the biggest fire that I need to put down right now? Right? Have that vision. So that's why as a BA, it's kind of simplistic in the sense that it's understanding user requirements, communicating it to developers, but all these are involved behind the scenes. And you should be cut out for that. I wouldn't say that anyone can become a BA. Most people can become BAs because you have that prior experience, you have that communication, and you can solve problems. Those are the most key skills. And if you possess that, you can transition and make yourself a BA, even if you don't have IT experience. That's the best part in this industry. Now let's just introduce you to some quick terminology. We already discussed a couple of these items, but just to formally introduce them. A project is an endeavor that has limited time, scope, and money, right? Resources are limited, time is limited. So you have a specific deadline and you're committing to a project. So it's very tangible. You know which project is successful, which project is not, right? So it's those aspects that make a project. A project is satisfying a particular goal within limited time, resources, and money. Okay? And from our context, we'd primarily be talking about IT projects, which means you have a certain set of features that need to be rolled into your business analysis framework and your end users in a limited time. So you have to go through the requirement gathering, meeting up, validating your assumptions, all that in that limited time frame that you're given. Business sponsors, we introduce them as people who are funding that project, meaning someone high up there who thinks that, okay, this X amount of dollars would probably help my users, help grow my business. Hence, I'm allocating this money to do this thing. So the definition of this thing might be a bit blurred. So that's where one of our first responsibilities as a BA comes in to clarify what the borders of the system are, what the boundaries of the system are for that particular dollar amount. Otherwise, people go all over the place. They just, because everyone cares for themselves. They want them to win, right? I mean, if I'm a user, I'll be most interested in the features that are helping me out, right? So they will ask for a lot of things. So that's where our negotiation, our management, keeping them focused as well as us staying focused comes into play. You have your external customers who are end users. Who is going to use the software? Those are the people that we primarily represent, primarily care for. And we also have internal teams which are developers, testers, project managers, who you need to handle, provide the right answers at the right time to get them moving in the development process. Make sense? So the software development lifecycle from a very holistic view would be gather the requirements, develop it, test it, send it into production, and then maintain it. So this is the very simplistic high-level process out there. Might be quite straightforward, might be a very top-down approach, but there are a lot of different proposals to make this process very efficient. Some of them are Agile, Scrum, RUP, you'll hear these keywords. And that's a takeaway for you to understand some common SDLCs, software development life cycles, and see what the advantages and disadvantages are compared to these different approaches. Because something as simple as propose, develop, test, and then maintain has different methodologies that are proposed to make that process as efficient as possible. So our core focus is going to be very upfront, upstream, right? The requirement gathering step. So our requirements are primarily related to business and functional requirements. Now, what do I mean by business requirement and a functional requirement? Let me take an example. My use case is to transfer funds to another user in the same bank. Okay? My use case, in the sense, my usage scenario is transferring funds to another person who has an account in the same bank that I bank with. So let's say Bank of America. So for that usage scenario, I could go to the teller and do the transaction there. I can give the account number and sign that I'm authorizing this transfer from this account to this account, and then they'll probably ID me, execute the transfer, give me a receipt, I'm done. I could do that. Some banks might allow you to do this over the ATM, where you choose the account number, whatever, validate, provide your PIN number, that serves as validating you. You get a receipt. That's the same process, but done through an ATM. I could also do this over the phone if the bank supports it, right? I probably have a phone PIN number, go through the process, and then they give me a confirmation code which serves as my receipt. And they can probably email me the confirmation too. So we spoke about teller process, ATM process, phone process, and you could also do it online. You have an online process to do that, most certainly, right? So all these things are about the same process to do what? Transfer funds. So transfer funds is the use case. A use case is nothing but a usage scenario, that's it. A typical case of how your user will use the system. And in this case, I didn't contain myself to a system, but generally speaking, what a use case is could be at the teller, could be at the ATM, could be online system, whatever, right? So that is called a business use case, because the process of transferring funds, the steps that need to be followed, the policy that needs to be ensured is the same regardless of whether I do it at the teller or my online system. What is the process, Kushbu? What are the things that you need to do as a teller to conduct the transfer process?
We usually just, when a client comes in, we will ask him what he needs to do. He will say, I need to transfer the funds. So we ask him about his account number, we ID him.
ID him.
We make sure that, and then usually with our bank, we do an extra step. We ask them about their prior transactions and stuff, just to make sure that it's the right person, because nowadays IDs have been
compromised.
Yeah, there have been compromisation in IDs, so we do that extra step, and then he will ask us to transfer to a different person. It could be a child, it could be a sister, it could be a mom or something. Then we don't ask them their account number, but we ask them their name and last name and address information, so that we can make sure that search that person out. Then we say, okay, we can take care of it, so we transfer it from his account to the other person's account. Give him a receipt without the other person's account number to just make sure that it's safe.
You're not providing more information than they should have.
Yes.
Perfect. So that's the process from a teller perspective. Now, IDing the person, right? Making sure that the person is who they claim to be. That could be the same in online banking scenario as well, because you are IDing the person by their right username and password. And then you mentioned asking for information about the other account. You could, second level of validations you mentioned. So that could be security questions. What was your last transaction, or whatever you want. If you wanted to, you can have that second level of validation. Then you ask for the transferee information, search, and then pull up the account and ask them to confirm is this the right account. Once they do, ask them, do you want to transfer now or a specific date, for example. Do that. Once it's done, present them with a screen, confirmation screen, which serves as a receipt. So you see how this online system aligns very closely with what the teller transaction looks like, And more importantly, it falls within the subset of what the teller does. Right? It should replicate it, but not deviate from what a teller is doing. Kushbu reminded me that the second level of validation should also be done. So that's her from a user's perspective. If we do this at the bank, we better do this on the online system. Make sense? Similarly, phone banking, phone PIN number, confirmation number. ATM is my card PIN number, which validates me as who I am. Right? So business use cases in general, a business policy that is laid out at the bank or at any industry, general policy step by step of what needs to be done. Generally you don't question policy because there's a good reason why they do all the steps that she described. Right? So you have that business policy. Now that needs to be translated into an IT system. It needs to fall under the definition of what they do at the bank. So you build it in your system. So once you make it system specific, it becomes functional requirements because it describes the specific process that the user needs to go through to get the same transaction done, or in IT language, to execute the same use case. Now my functional requirement for an ATM system could look different than an online system, could look different than a phone system. But these are all systems, these are all functional requirements, but the steps vary, right, based on the interface and what's available to the user, what information is available to the user. So basically, a use case is simply a step-by-step. Did someone have a question online? So use case is simply a step-by-step process or a dialogue that transpires between the user and the system. That's it. User does this, system does this. User does this, system does this. Just exactly as Kushbu described, but dependent on the system that you're building, online versus ATM versus phone. Make sense? Any questions? So that is pretty much what we do. And again, it's not as simple as I'm mentioning it. And obviously, my task is not to make it look simple. Although it's all common sense, certain best practices, certain methodologies, certain processes make it easier for us to get the job done right. Okay, that's where the discipline of business analysis and best practices and methods, ways to do it comes into play. For example, use case, it's a very interesting term. It seems like it's a big deal, right? Use case. But once I describe it, get down to the roots of it, it's quite simplistic. It's logical, it's common sense almost, right? And let's talk about UML. Anybody knows what UML stands for? UML, anyone? Folks on the phone? Unified Modeling Language, exactly. So again, it might seem like a programming language or a querying language, but it's not. It's simply an analysis toolbox. It's an analysis toolbox that allows you to represent what users have in their mind. Could be a business process, could be state diagram, could be use case diagram, could be a sequence diagram, anything. But it represents what the user does or what the IT system does. So what do you mean represents? It's really a diagram. It's like a flow chart, for example. Flow chart in UML is called activity diagrams. So for each person who's involved, for example, in our example, it's the customer and the bank. So customer will have its own column, bank will have its own column. The fancy term is swim lanes. Okay, each one is a swim lane. And it talks about what the different processes are, how the customer and the system interact in getting this done. Your same exact flowchart that you did in your mid-school perhaps. Diamonds for decisions and then multiple branches and so on. It has a little more features to represent a few specific scenarios in the IT world, but overall it boils down to a flowchart. Now similar to how you could have multiple diagrams in construction and architecture, for example. You would have a floor plan, you would have a front elevation, you would have a wiring, plumbing. All these diagrams are about the same house, right? Similarly, in IT, in UML, you have multiple diagrams to represent the same system, each one having its own focus and its own notations, semantics. And just because it has semantics, otherwise, it's hard to come up with a common understanding of what it means, right? So you need to agree upon a certain vocabulary, certain syntax, right? Otherwise, it's everybody's call. It becomes convoluted. So we agree upon a certain terminology, which allows us to represent the business processes and different areas of the system accurately to anyone who reviews it. And these are not too technical at all. Maybe you'll have to talk to your users and tell them how to read it the first time. And that would probably take 5 to 10 minutes, and that's it. So it's not supposed to be complicated. It's just that certain things mean certain strong understanding, has certain strong connotations. But it helps us to quickly generate these work products, and which is what we do. So rather than just gathering requirements and then translating it, we go through this process, draw UML diagrams, write use cases to make sure our odds of coming up with a successful project are better, because these are all well-tested and proven methods to gather requirements accurately and adequately. Make sense? Any questions? Folks on the phone, remember to ask your questions using the chat window, or feel free to unmute yourself and intervene. Now, just to give you a little background about the BA role, I know all of you have done some research and have some interest or understanding about it, but just to give you a few key pointers about the BA role. Firstly, I want to point out that it's a need-based role. It's not like day one when we started IT development, they said, oh, we need a tester, developer, oh, we're missing a BA. We need a BA, and so on. It did not come up in their first designations list, if you will. It came up because we had these developers, we had these users. Users envision something in their mind. They explain the best they could because they are not technical people. And again, developers, they want the best for their users, but there's a communication gap. They're not talking to each other, right? There's a popular cartoon about a user envisioning a simple swing and developers developing something totally fancy and something totally out of mind for what the user originally wanted. So there was a communication gap, there was an issue there. So BAs were invented only to fix that problem, right? It's been said that about 60 to 70% of projects fail because of bad requirements. 60 to 70% of projects. So even if you have a BA, if you're not going through that formal process, formal methods, then there is a chance you might miss certain areas causing to the failure of that project. A lot of people become BAs because they know the system very well, because they know the industry very well. And these people are called subject matter experts. And these are the ones who we gather the requirements from, subject matter experts, who know the industry, who know the system, or your end users. These are the ones who supply input for us to build our IT system. Now, a lot of these SMEs, subject matter experts, SMEs, a lot of these people become BAs because there was not another person who could take over that role. This person has the knowledge, let them just write the requirements, because if you're asking requirements from them, let them write the requirements. So a lot of times you will see that people who are already working as BAs, they get into the field based on having background in that area and not formally trained as BAs. And there's no degree program that can directly help you become a BA. The closest would be MIS or MBA perhaps. But there isn't a degree program, okay, let me go learn computer science for BAs. No, not exactly. So the concept of efficiency in terms of requirement gathering, accuracy in terms of requirement gathering, that's still new. That's still very recent thought process. So since it's a need-based role and we are invented to solve a problem, we better have the ammunition needed to solve the problem correctly. right? We need to know the tools, the skill set, the know-how to solve the problems accurately and adequately. We are upstream in the development process, which means we are at the very top of the game, meaning the project is first assigned to us, we build the use cases, we build the requirements, then it flows to developers and testers and product support and so on, right? Since we are upstream, we stand a solid responsibility there too, meaning we need to make sure that features are not just getting thrown in here and there. We need to make sure that the process is managed. We need to make sure that we are making progress. So it's a combination of people role, project management, requirement gathering, a little bit of a lot of these aspects. Make sense? We need to serve as a bridge between stakeholders. When I say stakeholders, it's not just users and developers, but project sponsors, project managers, developers, testers, users, anyone who has a vested interest in the project. That's what the term stakeholders mean. Anyone who is interested in the success of the project. And we are the point of contact for every single stakeholder. First the BA. And then the BA says, okay, you know what, this will be best handled by this tester. So let me coordinate that and arrange that meeting for you. Okay. Someone wants a presentation about the system, a BA gets called in. Make sense? So we wear a lot of different hats. Organizer, listener, investigator, facilitator, communicator, collaborator, innovator. Sometimes we need to think outside the box and propose a solution, which is simplistic enough to solve the problem, but a very inexpensive method too. Not every single thing needs to be automated. You need to have that mindset too. If it's going to cost you $100,000 to automate everything, but $20,000 to automate most, but except for these couple of pieces, it might be worth it to have those couple of pieces handled outside of the system by people, because you're saving so much. So again, as you gather experience as a BA, you will have the knack for identifying opportunities where you could build in more efficiency in the entire process. Make sense? And lastly, we are domain and technology agnostic, which means we don't care that the system is developed in .NET or Java or Ajax or anything else fancy that might come about. Doesn't matter. Our analysis process, our skill set, our thinking, because it's a logical job, it's a common sense job. There's no such thing as new common sense, right? It's common sense. There are some established practices that assist us, but not replace what thinking needs to be done. One of the participants from an earlier demo asked me this question. Okay, we talk about these BA tools. Which is the best tool to gather requirements? What do you think? What is the best tool to gather requirements? Any thoughts? Best tool to gather requirements? Communication, okay. Understanding? Yeah, go ahead. Talking to the stakeholders, personally gathering them, okay. Being a user for a certain time? Sure, sure. All these, but primarily you as a BA, right? Your mind, your mindset. So there's no software tool. Yeah, there's no software tool that can easily tell you, okay, ask these questions. If those responses are done, check the checkbox. So these tools for a BA are not part and parcel of your requirement gathering, but just makes it easier to document your findings. And these methodologies are no replacement for you to do these meetings, but just helps you check the right check boxes and make sure you're heading in the right direction and you have a roadmap to follow. So there's no software or tool out there that can help you become a good BA or a great BA. If you are a good user of that tool, then it just means it'll take you quicker, it'll take you shorter time to document something using that tool. I always say, if you can do a diagram on the back of a napkin, you could do it on a tool. Tool makes it prettier, but doesn't make it more explanatory, right? It is what you provided. It's dumb in that respect. Because for other disciplines, tools mean a lot. For BAs, it simply supports your work process, supports what you do on a daily basis. It's as simple as that. Make sense? And a couple of areas for you to get additional resources for BA related areas. One, you can sign up for our blog by going to requirementsync.com/email, and modernanalyst.com is a great resource, tons of articles, a lot of them at a beginner level that you can understand and perceive what goes in the BA world. And even newer developments are shared quite prominently. It's more of a community portal where people, BAs themselves, contribute to the article set. So now we're done with first part. We know what a BA does, what that job responsibility entails. Any questions? All right.